government's argument here is we did not have capital gains in the act when we signed this treaty to which you are applying for relief. So my strict interpretation of the treaty is if there was no such thing as a capital gain in Canada when I signed the treaty, then you can't be eligible for relief from tax on a capital gain in Canada. That seems to be the government's
the argument. Which I would say, well, you government, you signed a treaty with the U.S. The treaty is reciprocal.
It is reciprocal.
So you must have intended the same outcome to apply both to Canada and the U.S.
Right. And so one way to answer the government's position in this is to say, okay, but just strict legal interpretation of the words of the statute in question being this 1956 implementation of this treaty, the words say that non-residents of Canada are eligible for exemption from capital gains in Canada. That's what the words of the treaty. Why would you not apply them to me? And I am thinking to myself that you don't need a large liberal intention of the parties. You could do this on a strict textual, you just have to apply the treaty. And the reason that it's not straightforward is simply this fact that there was no capital gains at the time we made those words. We said those words. When we said you were exempt, we didn't have capital gains. So it's a contextual argument. The government's argument is contextual. It's saying, hey, at the time we wrote those words that you'd be exempt from Canadian tax, there was no Canadian tax, so you can't be exempt from something that doesn't exist. Yeah. That's contextual. And so it's purposive in a sense of like, well, what's the intention of the treaty? Well, it wasn't to relieve Canadian tax because there was no Canadian tax. So therefore, you can't come into court now and say the purpose of the treaty was to relieve my tax.
Yeah, because if you go back to the Vienna Convention, you could say we could not have agreed to exempt you from something that doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you put it in a reciprocal way, that's because you thought that if ever you had this tax in the future, I want to relieve you.
Yeah, and so that's why here earlier on somewhere they say like it's you can imagine things that are going to happen in the future. Like you should be presumed to imagine things that can happen. If you sign something that's reciprocal in nature, there's something in the back of your head says, well, if ever we were to tax capital gains, we would extend this reciprocally to the U.S. Like, actually, it's interesting, right? Because the idea is like Americans, you're negotiating with Canada for a treaty. And you're saying that you, America, will not tax Canadians that have capital gains in the United States in exchange for us, Canada, not taxing you. Well, we don't tax you, so you should just go away, and you don't need this provision, right? You should just give us the relief. It should be one-way relief. And you could imagine the U.S. negotiator saying, you could imagine them in the room saying, well, yeah, okay, fine, you don't tax capital gains now, but I don't want you to ever tax capital gains. I don't want you to be in the position of adopting a capital gains tax later, and then I'm relieving and you're not. So obviously I want it to be reciprocal.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
Well, that's why it's reciprocal and not one way. That's why. That's why anybody would have a treaty that has something that's reciprocal when they don't have a domestic law of that nature.
Well, except if they're like, if ever we implement this, we don't want to relieve you.
Okay, exactly. Protective the other way.
Yeah, you could protect it.
Right. But so, yeah. I mean, I conclude at the end of this case that, as we've already noted while we were reading it, that there's a lot of extraneous yapping about general principles.
And the case is basically, here was the fact, quote, 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 end.
And therefore, the end,
Yeah.
So, but it's fascinating then to me that when we get to Crown Forest, which we'll read next, we're going to have that money quote. We're going to use that money quote, and we're going to say, like, this is the true intention. But they just threw that in there and didn't explain why we need a true intention at all. Like, they didn't discuss true intention. They didn't talk about intention.
They were not even explaining the true intentions of the parties.
Not at all.
They were not explaining why it's there, why it's reciprocal.
Nothing. We're posing that now.
Yeah.
We're suggesting, well, maybe it's reciprocal because the U.S. doesn't want to give up, because U.S. doesn't want to give up unless it's assured that that Canada is going to give up.
You're telling me the goal of the interpretation is finding the true intentions of the parties.
Right. Well, what are they?
You are not finding the true intentions of the parties. You don't even discuss the true intentions.
Yeah. So I think we'll see when we go to Crown Forest, maybe some more discussion about what these intentions are, true or not true, or false or fake news intentions. And but what we see right away here is something that is frustrating to readers of the law, which is the court will say, will make a claim, and then that will become judge-made common law doctrine, but there's nothing behind it. There's no analysis to help us.
Because they will be like, oh, in Gladden they said that. No one reads Gladden.
Right.
And now it's like, oh, the Supreme Court said that.
But we still don't know what it means.
Nothing.
It's based on nothing. Yeah.
And the word true intentions. Intentions
Never.
I can agree, but the true intention.
Never even
It's not in the
raised.
Vienna Convention. It's not in the word
It's not
article.
there.
It's just a word that the judge added in the sentence
Yeah.
that means nothing.
Yeah. So we, as usual, don't like that kind of law because it doesn't give us analysis. It just gives us claims, which then are later going to be used one way or the other in a way that can't be justified. And now we have no explanation for them. So, yeah. Great.
Well, thank you for watching.